The meeting of the Commission on the Arts to order. First agenda item would be public forum. Would your daughter like to say anything since she's a member of the public?
Lydia, do you want to say anything for the public comment about the arts and Ames? No. You're good. She is at Art Camp this week, aren't you? Yeah.
How's that going?
Well, next agenda item is approval of the minutes from our June 7th meeting. Everybody have a chance to go through those? Any questions, comments, concerns?
No, look good. It was brief.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to approve them. Okay.
Second.
All right. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. It's now time to approve the final reports. We have the 2021 annual grant final reports, which Carly sent out, and everybody should have had them, and hopefully you had an opportunity to review them. I know it was a lot of paper, and they were a little more interesting this year because of all the curveballs that were thrown to them with the pandemic, et cetera. But overall, other than maybe the Octagon having a $3 million income.
6 million.
Was it 6 million?
So there were multiple organizations that had issues with the form. Obviously, the Octagon was one, and Actors was another, and then a couple. So, but it was specifically the way the form was generated.
Yeah, we figured that out, and we're going to take off some of the auto calculating that was put in there. I'm not sure how that got so messed up, but it's just gonna. We're just gonna remove that so they can enter in.
So I think it could probably depend on like what version of Adobe they're using, and so if it's just set up that they can do their own calculations, then that shouldn't be a problem.
And then there's a handful of groups that submitted, either haven't submitted theirs yet or submitted them today, which you don't have. So any stragglers we'll bring back to you at the next meeting, so you can approve those.
Are there any particular reasons why they're late? Any problems, or is it just
so one thing?
being disorganized?
Well, one thing I think so. There's a little of the just tardiness, but one thing that's been pointed out by a couple organizations that is legitimate, I think, and that we need to address moving forward is the deadline to submit the form is only a week or two after the end of the fiscal year. That I've not known that to be a problem in the past, but this year there were a couple organizations that commented that they haven't gotten all of their accounts reconciled, all their bills and so forth from the previous year by that point. And so they've asked that in the future we delay that a little further. I think we could go as far out as maybe the third week in July.
I think we talked about that a little. She's in a story
Last week.
story theater.
Yeah. That's it.
So we can make that change for next year's final reports, if that's something that you'd like to do.
I think it makes sense because I know a couple of organizations were saying that they'd had a change in whoever does their bookkeeping or accounting, and most of those people are volunteers. And if you don't have the person you've had for the last 2 years, it could be a challenge sometimes for them to.
And this
wait
year has
through
been
that.
challenging financially.
Well, yeah, I mean, they had to juggle a lot of things. And
Yeah, and next year will be the same or similar anyway.
Yeah.
So if we can extend that deadline, that would be great. Because we don't really look at it more than a week before anyway.
Yeah. Do we need a motion for that, or we just slide that in?
Yeah, a motion would be helpful.
Okay.
Everybody's looking at me.
I think we
Uh,
did.
We did it just the temporarily for that
temporarily.
one request. We didn't do
Uh-huh.
it for the next year. So it was for this year
Oh, for
that
this
we
year.
did.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I think we'd need a motion to amend the CODA calendar.
okay.
What if it's just like the last Monday of July, just so that it could be, that way it would also give the office, as opposed to, you wouldn't want to do maybe like the last day of July, because it could be on a weekend, or it could be the
Right,
day
could be
before a
Tuesday,
meeting.
right.
Mhm.
Sorry, it could
Also,
be
we
the,
want to give the city
yeah,
time to process it and stuff.
yeah.
Something like that would be fine.
That
So
makes perfect sense. Well,
how
We
to
could
phrase-
do the third Friday.
Well, the weekend is then dead anyway, so we might as well give them the weekend to work on it. Right?
Okay.
Those are volunteers.
Well, Monday's a bit better.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I saw some of them turned it in on the 4th of July, right? So like, it doesn't,
That's when they had time to get.
yeah,
to the-
holidays don't matter.
Right.
Yeah.
So what is the current deadline? Is it since
This year,
it's
I think it
calendar
was
date?
July 9th. I don't think we've
We could do-
in the past picked a particular day of the month. It's just, what's a day that's
Right.
soon enough that
So
done. But the third Monday of the month, or the last Monday of July, I think would be effective, because then you're always guaranteed that that deadline happens a week before the CODA meeting.
Yeah.
Right. If you
At-
pick any
at
other day of the
least,
week.
Yeah.
and how long does it take to the city to turn it around and send it to us?
We finalize. We work on the agenda and like to get it finalized by Wednesday or Thursday.
Right.
And so
Then it
picking,
just gives us a couple of days to look this over, which is probably enough.
yeah,
well, next year, the final Monday is the 25th, and then I'm going to guess that our first meeting would then be the 1st, because that's that's
Yeah.
a Monday. So, I mean, that'd be a full week. That,
Yeah.
All right, I'm good with that.
Do we have a motion?
I moved to update the CODA calendar so that the annual grant reports are due the final Monday of July.
I shall second.
Second, all right.
Now, we can
All those in
discuss-
favor?
wait, we can
Oh.
discuss now. Just thinking, should we make it more specifically the Monday before the August CODA meeting? In case for some reason the August CODA meeting is on the 8th for some weird reason.
Well, that's what I was looking at. So the 2023,
Mhm.
the last Monday would be July 24th, and the first CODA meeting would be August 7th, just because of
That's
how.
okay.
So it's still a week.
So then,
That still gives
Oh,
them
no.
the same amount of time to work.
no, it'd be the 31st. Sorry, that's up there. So. I don't know.
I guess we could, if it ends
I'll-
up being like the 31st is the last.
That's
That
actually,
would still, that would
yeah.
still.
It
give
would
them-
still be a
full
give them
week.
It's still a week
yeah.
by
So-
definition. Yeah, okay.
No,
so then it
yeah.
doesn't matter.
That sounds fine.
Yeah. So the last Monday, yeah.
That will occasionally be during RAGBRAI, but that only affects a small fraction of our arts group.
It's been a couple of years since I rode Ragbri.
I just got back Saturday. So, yeah,
Well, you did
Thank you.
right, Brad.
Okay.
Oh, good
All
for
right.
you.
No recommended change.
Well, all those in favor of pushing back the deadline for the upcoming years to the last Monday in July, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
and then we just need a motion approving the final reports that have been received, unless you have any concerns about any of them.
Yeah, we got sidetracked, so. Any other questions or concerns on the final reports that we've gotten in so far?
Do you get a lot of handwritten ones? That one was a little
Hard to read.
hard to read in some parts. didn't
I
know
was
if that
imagining it probably had to do with the form issues at the same time too.
Yeah,
That could
But-
I
be.
think
Yeah,
that's the case. There was
Yeah.
one or two agencies that said that
yeah.
they kind of gave up on the
Form.
formatting, which I
Mhm.
don't blame them.
Okay.
Well, sometimes the person filling it out is older than me and scribbles more than me. And so if we get the new
Sometimes
format
they're
out,
seventh
hopefully
graders.
that'll resolve.
That was all. Okay. Other than that, no.
I didn't see any irregularities.
All those in favor of approving the final reports?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Who moved and seconded? I missed that part. For the
Hmm?
minutes.
I
Who
don't think
moved
we
and
did that
seconded?
part.
Do we need a motion?
I'll motion. Second? Deanne,
Thank
second.
you.
Do we need to vote again?
The spring 2021 special grant final reports. Everybody get a chance to look at those.
Mhm.
Any questions or concerns or?
The mobile stage is a little smaller than I anticipated.
Yeah. Well, they originally were going to do something larger, but it was costing a lot of money.
Mhm.
And they don't have a budget for that, even with the help that we provided them.
Right. It just, the picture came as sort of a surprise, but there was a chair, which is kind of all you need to keep your musicians relaxed.
Well,
You
unofficially,
also have to be able to pedal it,
Mhm.
right? Like, I think that's part too.
they're
Right.
still looking to do something larger, but it's a matter of finding a vehicle that's in decent condition that they can convert. Because they would like to have, kind of a wall, well, not a wall, but speakers more than just a PA, so they could have room for an entire band or several different performers or even small dance groups.
Mhm.
But at this point, they've looked and they haven't found anything that would work that they could convert
Within
easily.
a reasonable.
They've looked at several things and almost bought an old food truck type vehicle. But then when they started looking at all the costs of renovating it and everything else, it was not cost effective. So.
Yeah.
uh,
I'm
I
looking
believe-
forward to the performances. It
I
should be-
believe
should
they're
be pretty
looking
fun.
for a sponsor, and if they can get a
Uh-huh.
sponsor,
Yeah, they were talking about 3 performances still this summer, so
yeah,
hopefully that'll work out.
and then hopefully in the fall it'll get going too. So. Well, we have a motion to approve the spring special grant final reports.
So moved.
Okay,
I will so second.
all right. All those in favor of approving the spring special grant, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Next item is the spring 2022 special grant application and report forms. Everybody have an opportunity to kind of read through those?
We skipped the annual grant application. Item 5.
Oh, I jumped right over that. I was getting excited. I'm excited about the spring grant.
You're hungry, Tom, you know it.
No, I actually ate a late lunch so I could get through.
Oh, my God, it's happy.
So most of this is just changing dates. We will make a change to the annual grant instructions document, processes and guidelines, to indicate that on the last page, the final report's going to be due the last Monday of July. Right now it says July 8th, but we'll make that change. Otherwise, the rest of the annual grant application materials either stay the same each year or just have dates that are different.
Good.
If you have any concerns about anything that's on there.
Can we change some of the questions and the way things are worded?
We can.
Because I had a lot of questions. Um,
Just before we do
Yeah.
that, one quick note. So we did make a lot of changes the last 3 or 4 years. So a lot of the form fields that are set up in the application are mirrored in the final report.
Yeah.
So if we make one
Yep.
change in one spot, we should consider making it in the other two for
Yeah.
consistency.
Mhm.
But go ahead.
Yeah. So I guess there were just things that just thinking about having to fill out forms like these a lot, and then also just trying to really understand what it is that we're asking of them, because I think, I don't know that we're getting the information that we want in the reports that we're getting. They're answering the questions, but I don't think we're asking the right questions, if that makes sense, in some cases. Like for one example is, like looking at the criteria for funding where it says the emphasis is on benefit to young people in Ames, but we never actually ask them how they benefit young people in Ames. So if that's something we're emphasizing, then it's not anywhere in the application or in the report. It comes up in that just kind of qualitative measure of percentage of participation. which it seems like from all of the final reports I read is all just an estimate. No one's actually tracking that information. They're just doing their best guess as to what percentage of their audience might fall into this age range category. And so that's another one, like, I don't know why we ask that if most of the organizations don't actually track that. Like I just don't see what we're gaining from asking that, them to report on that. But then also like saying, if we want to emphasize young people, then that should be something we're asking them is how are they planning to reach young people? And then the other ones I had specifically are related to the questions. Let me find them. The one around diverse audiences. Maybe that's not on the application. Is it on just
This report,
on the final report?
well, I think it was mentioned in the application. Maybe under the criteria.
Trying to see. Well, so I know for sure it was in the reports that we were reading. So, so again, that's where that table comes in, but I didn't really see the value of that table when all of those numbers were just guessing, right? And then I guess I was assuming that asking them to include that was to try and address that emphasis on young people, but I'm not sure. But then how do you promote your programming to reach diverse segments of our community? But never anywhere do we actually describe what does that mean? Like, what do we mean by diverse segments of our community? And so almost all of the responses there were we use social media. They're like, how does social media, what does that even mean? And that's just kind of even like one of them said, everyone in the trio was from a diverse background, but what they grew up in like Nevada as opposed to Ames or like, because that could be if that's what they're meaning, but it's never ever defined anywhere and it's never explained. And so what are we actually asking them and what are we measuring with that question? The only times I thought that perhaps diversity was addressed in the application was when we asked about whether or not maybe this is the special project. I think I'm thinking of the special project application. We asked about accessibility for participants. And then when we asked about admission costs, I think those are two things that could be addressing diverse populations, but we don't actually specifically say that. So
So do you feel we should drill deeper in those or just take it out completely?
well, I don't think it does anything as it is because
But I
Because
mean,
it
would you
could be
think we
answered
should
anyway.
dig a little deeper and find out ethnicity and male, female, all of that? Or do you
Yeah.
want to kind of just eliminate all of that from the process altogether?
Well, I don't think you want to do that because then again, it's just going to turn into the same thing that's happening above where people are just giving numbers because they're not going to collect that information, nor do we want people to collect that information. And so I guess that's like, I don't think that's what we're getting at with this question. And so I guess my first question is to understand what are we wanting to know when we ask them that question?
Or is it we just have that question there to make them cognizant of the issue? And we really don't care what they say as long as they think we care
And I
that they're
think,
doing this.
well, I've been here almost 5.5 years now. And I think our main goal, of course, this type of thing was in there when I got here too, but was to find out if they're trying to reach out to the entire community, not just kids that go to Meeker School or something like that, but are we reaching all areas of the community, whether they live in, up in Somerset or they live over on East 6th Street? We want to know that it's accessible to them if they have an interest and a desire, and that maybe money isn't a barrier and things like that.
Mhm, mhm.
So if we need to rephrase that
So that's the
to
goal.
emphasize it, that would be fine.
So then maybe it's just like, who is your target audience and how do you plan to reach them?
That'd be better.
Right. And then that leaves it really open for them to describe who that is.
Or how to expand their target audience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's when in the application and then the kind of the questions that we can ask when they come in for that meeting is some of those about how could they expand who they've already defined as their
Right.
target audience.
Well, and when you look at benefit to Ames, it says participants, artists, volunteers, full-time, part-time staff. But how does that apply to a concert? I mean, it's participants almost in the organization versus the people who are attending the event.
Mhm.
Right, that's
And
farther
We're
down
funding
the
kind of
audience.
events.
Mhm.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know.
And perhaps like in the application, it makes sense to put it that way and just use numerical estimates, but then in the final report, just make that a narrative response, right? Like, yeah, because it could be just a narrative as opposed to filling in a number. I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
And
and
that
then,
could give more information.
I guess there's A and A1, and then there's B, which talks about audience, but
Mhm.
it's a little, it could be cleaned up probably.
I think that's a good idea. I do like the idea of having it in the application though, because then we can see what their
Yeah.
intentions are as
Yeah.
opposed to what their
And their-
outcomes were.
Yeah.
A narrative.
We do ask in the application on page 2, the top question there, in a brief paragraph, summarize your organization's purpose, general use of CODA funding, and targeted audience.
That's a lot to fit into 100 words.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we could shift the targeted audience to a little bit below.
A separate.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
the next question is benefit the Ames community, further the arts and Ames, specify your target audience and how you might wish to expand that kind of thing. That would be good.
And it does kind of lend itself.
So you want to pull the targeted audience part from the first statement on that page to the second one?
Under the narrative
Yeah.
description.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
I think it makes
Yeah.
more sense, yeah.
And that gives them more space to do that.
So the second question would read, provide a narrative description of the way in which the requested funds will benefit the Ames community and further the arts in Ames. Please describe programs, events planned for the requested year. Please describe your targeted audience. Or how do you want to word that?
Or how to expand your targeted audience.
Or who is your target audience?
Yeah.
Who is your
I think it's just asking them who in the application.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Who is your targeted audience?
And then to be as specific as possible after that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would be doing too much to ask about expanding that target audience? Maybe.
I don't think it makes, I wouldn't ask how to expand it in the application because hopefully they're already thinking of like
Yeah.
a broad reach, right? And then I think we come in as support for them by suggesting ways to expand it when we can. I mean, if needed, and potentially it's not needed, right?
Yeah. That could be something added into the final report, a simple question of
How did your
did
target
you
audience-
and how did you expand your targeted audience?
Well, on the fourth page in the application, we asked them, how will you target audiences who may not be reached by the methods previously indicated?
And
We're
that,
asking
so
them
those,
both.
that 1E, that was another one, that thing that I wrote is I don't know why we give them that list to just check boxes. Like, why not just make it an open-ended question of how do you intend to reach your target audience? And then you could keep that second question of how might you reach additional audiences if we wanted to ask that question, but,
So rather than having the check off, just how do you plan to,
yeah, and just let them tell us. Because even like checking social media, like you check and then that's done. There are a million different ways that you could use social media, right? Like that doesn't actually tell you anything.
Because there's not an other checkbox. They're all very specific things.
Sure.
I mean, TV, radio, yeah, like you said, social media, but you're limited to the Ames Trib, Iowa State Daily, but you could go other options. You could even throw it into the Des Moines market to try and bring people up. So, yeah, doing away with the checklist might open it up. And it might cause them to think a little of like, well, how else can I? Or do I have to stick to these?
And you could put in parentheses behind that. How do you intend to promote this? Like they could give us a list if that's, list or narrative form accepted. If we want to provide that as an option. But I think that just having them put it into words as opposed to them just checking ours makes more sense to me.
About list or describe how you plan to
Yes,
reach your
perfect.
intended audience.
Try to be as specific as possible, maybe. So they don't just say social media. Specific.
Yeah.
For some, that's
Are you
specific.
going on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram only? Are you a TikTok fan? Apparently Tom's not.
No.
But yeah, there's all these different ways, which could all be viable. I don't have them all.
Depends on what your audience is.
Yeah.
Yeah, for example, I don't see skywriting on this list.
But does the second question on that page make sense then? If
Yes.
Yeah.
still, if the first one's open-ended?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're trying to encourage them to do. Good.
Yeah.
So we've got changes on page 2, changes on page 4. What else?
We changed the age on seniors?
No.
No.
If you qualify for AARP, then you're senior.
So my only, as you were saying, Brian, connecting the final report to the application, my thought would be if we wanted to keep this, approximate percentages of participants by age, again, to see how that measures with the emphasis on young people. But then on the report changing, I would change both those numerical parts to just brief narratives, right? Like the second one being how specific, if that's what we want to know, say, how did your organization serve young people in the community? If that's the reason we're asking them to do that.
Under C?
On the application, it's the top of page 3, those two things.
Right.
And then, so it's on the report, it's 2, benefit to Ames.
Right. Which part on the report did you want to change? I missed that.
So I guess first my clarification question is, do we ask them to do those percentages to see how they engage young people? Is that why
It's
we're
really, I
asking
think,
them?
if you're referring to page 3, it's really more to who are they serving? And it doesn't necessarily have to be young people. I mean, like when we work with the Des Moines
Well,
Metropolitan
so on our
Opera.
guidelines, it says that we should, we're emphasizing organizations that serve young people.
Mhm. But it doesn't have to be so.
Yeah.
Like the opera, for instance, that we follow up with.
Yeah.
We have a lot that are really child focused, I guess, or young people focused, and that's why we look at this. But I don't know if we have to have it.
So when we determine funding, do we benefit or give priority to organizations that serve young people?
No, I think we weigh the entire application for everybody.
So then maybe we take that off as the criteria for funding.
Well, we also have a portfolio, right? Some are
Yeah.
more towards seniors, some are more towards kids.
Mhm.
Ones towards kids is a good thing.
Yeah.
Right? So we want to encourage that with the question. I mean,
But we're not
they-
asking
they-
the
yeah, they-
question.
Right, well,
Yeah.
but in the criteria of funding, there are a number of criteria. That's one of them. We want to keep it as one of them to encourage them to include young people.
I mean, we are trying to grow the arts
Mhm.
in the community, and obviously reaching out to the younger population is important to do that. And I think it's kind of important to see if there's a focus with the individual performances. I mean, actors will do something that is totally inappropriate for a younger audience, and yet they'll turn around and do something that, you
Yeah.
know, every 12-year-old in town wants to see. And I think if we have them break that out like that, that kind of makes sense to me. Now, if there's a better way to say it, I'm all open for that.
I just think it's, I guess just the section on the guidelines for criteria for funding. Like that's the only age group that's ever mentioned. And if we're saying these are the 6 things that you need for it to be considered for funding, and we're emphasizing a benefit to young people, but then we're never really measuring that, I guess, other than these percentages, but we're not determining funding on, like, that's not, no funding is contingent on
No.
engaging young people.
No, I wouldn't say
Yeah.
it is.
So you're
Yeah.
suggesting maybe we keep the before the hash?
Yeah, like, so just
And
keeping
there's
it
the
nature of
benefit group.
audience to be served benefited, and just eliminating that with emphasis on benefit to young people if that's not something we're emphasizing.
I agree with that.
If we're really focused on more of it, because then in the discussions of the application, if we're saying we want a really broad portfolio of ages and group, like, then I think that makes it maybe a little bit more clear to the people when they're also writing their application, like their narrative. They're not going to try and force a way to like engage young people in an
Right.
inappropriate,
Right.
show, like just like you were saying with actors, like.
Okay.
Mhm.
So we're
I don't
looking
know.
at
It just makes a
a
little bit
mutual
more
fund
clear.
approach here, then?
Yeah, a balanced
works.
portfolio.
Well, hopefully that
There, that's
question, in replacing that, hopefully they'll answer that question in the
In their-
targeted
yeah.
audience portion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like Story Theater obviously is targeting younger,
Mhm.
Right.
younger
but-
people.
But then you look at Town and Gown, which is, you know, mostly old folks going to chamber music, but they try and bring in students with free tickets and so on,
Right,
which is a definite plus whenever we consider their applications.
yeah.
And if we ever had to justify giving them money, we could point to this thing and saying, well, they're trying to bring in young people. If that's not one of our criteria, then
Mhm.
that may reduce that sort of
Unless you
lever.
wanted to expand the criteria where it's, how would you reach out to? Of course, then we're going back to explaining the target audience again. but-
Right. I mean, I don't think Town and Gown will stop the free tickets for students if this
No.
this disappears by any means,
Yeah.
because that's part of their mission, whether or not it's in the code of guidelines or not.
So we don't want to add anything about diversity there, do we? I mean, it depends how you know, is age a diversity issue?
It can be.
It just depends on how you define it, which is,
We
Yeah.
haven't.
yeah, which it wasn't defined.
I mean, a diverse group, you know, my 12-year-old and my grandma,
Yeah.
they're pretty diverse and they don't watch the same thing. So,
Probably good for the grandmother.
Yeah. So Nancy, your point simply is that this is the only place where a specific group is
Yeah.
is mentioned.
Yeah.
And that's a good point.
And then we don't follow up with how did you meet that group's needs?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. There's nothing saying how did you benefit young
Yes.
people
Right.
Yeah.
in the final
Right.
report.
So to either have it both places or
Yes.
neither place. Well, a lot of the groups do really target young people.
Right.
I mean, from what, the dance center and,
Mhm.
you know, from
Story theater.
toddlers.
Commotion and, yeah.
through
Well,
high
we could
school.
expand it too, to a more diverse, instead of singling out just children, we could do different segments. I don't know if we want to list every
Well,
possible diversity, but we could change it too.
Well, we actually give ourselves more freedom if we remove that, because the first part does say the nature of the audience to be served and benefited. If we, as CODA, decide that our portfolio is short on things for old people, then we can preferentially fund things for old people to broaden the portfolio. This gives us that power.
kind of puts it into their hands to tell us what they're doing instead of, like you said, just absently filling in a number.
I mean, we do still want the information on the demographics at
Right.
in the final report, but it's not like it's tied to this. Interesting.
Just change it to a diversity question then.
I mean, I think what David said was just getting rid of the with emphasis on benefit to young people at the end of the sentence, and it's fine.
Mhm.
Then to leave what we have in the application and the report.
Right. I think I like that.
Yeah.
I like the idea of giving us a little bit more oversight or power.
Sounds like a consensus. Did you follow that, Brian?
Yeah.
Okay.
Got that one.
Sorry, we're kind of mumbling.
That one was
each other
easy.
here.
What else?
Anything else, Nancy?
Oh, sorry. I was.
Well, no,
This is terrific.
that's why we like new people and fresh eyes. It's
Exactly.
important.
uh,
We'll get complacent here.
So I think that was all on the final, like the annual grant application. And then did we talk about on the final report for the annual grant, changing those, getting rid of those diverse populations questions? Or changing them to who was your target audience and how did you
That's under the
reach
table,
them?
underneath the table on,
Underneath the table, yeah.
how would you like that worded?
I think it could just be, like, how did you reach the target audience specified in your application,
Yeah.
right? You don't need them to restate it, or maybe you do, especially if there's change in quota board members from when the applications are given to when the final report. So like, briefly describe who your target audience was and how you reached them. So that's a really terrible phrasing of a question. But
Well, you could say, were you successful in reaching your target audience with a
that's
follow?
just yes or no.
True, if you do a follow-up of saying, did you see an increase outside your target audience? I don't know. I mean, these are bad wording, but I guess the spirit is, did you get in the people that you wanted to target? Did you also attract people that you weren't necessarily going for?
Right.
I don't know how to really say
Yeah,
that. But, you know.
I do like that because that goes into the expanding the scope of the agency, right? Of the organizations. So, how well, what, are you happy with the target audience? That, do you feel that you, yeah, this is our.
Where you
Yeah,
could say,
and I agree. You don't want it to be a yes/no
But
answer.
how about
Well,
how
you could
effective
say-
were you at
yeah,
reaching your target?
were you successful in reaching the target audience you outlined in your application? If not, how can you improve in the future? Or what
Yeah.
strategies will you, I mean, there's sort of a learning element to it, right?
Right.
That's what you're going for, is that
Mhm.
right, Steve?
Yeah.
So like, how well did you do in reaching your target audience?
And what can you improve?
What plans do you have for making, yeah, what Brian said.
Yeah.
So you could combine the two questions, kind of like, how did you promote your programming and how successful were you in attracting your target audience?
That's good.
Yeah.
Let's make it
The-
one long question with two parts, and then say, can you identify additional ways to reach your target audience in the future?
Reach and expand.
Yeah.
Because the expand means more of your target audience, but could also be read as broadening your target audience.
Right.
We can let them run with that, how they choose.
Like, what additional ways, in what additional ways could you reach and
Right.
expand your target audience in the future?
And that could, I mean, from our point of view, reading those answers could tell us, are they pigeonholing themselves into,
Yeah.
we're going to go for the Green Hills community, or that's our start, we're expanding, you know, we've noticed younger families, let's go there. It could kind of tell us if they're a little more complacent and just, we're getting the same old crew coming in to watch every time.
Not that there's anything wrong.
No, you need your base audience,
Yeah.
clearly, but, you know, no offense to anyone, as I told actors years ago, if all you're targeting is your 60 plus, eventually your audience will die off. Now what do you have? So you have to keep expanding and attracting the younger crowd to replace the older crowd.
Those are also questions when they present.
Mhm.
which they will here in not that long.
Yeah.
We ask those kinds of questions. Who is your target audience? How are you going to get there? Because if they don't show up here to explain themselves, they're not eligible.
Mhm.
And usually they're excited when they get some questions, unless
Yeah.
it's on the financials and they don't have the right person here to answer. So,
Yeah.
but I think we'll do a pretty good job, especially with this group, of
Right.
asking some good questions when they come in and getting their focus on what they need to be.
So Brian, can you read that back to us?
How did you promote your programming, and how well did you reach your targeted audience?
Mhm.
And in what ways can you expand your audience in the future?
Good.
Yeah. Simple and direct.
That sounds good.
So we've got changes for all three forms. That's fine. No, that's fine.
I did
Just wanna make
have,
sure-
I had one other.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Please, no, this is
Just
fabulous.
thinking about attending the workshops for applicants, and I understand the reasoning behind it, but also I'm wondering, especially given, I don't know, things we've learned over the last year, but thinking about some of the longtime arts organizations leaders in Ames, like Heather Johnson or Jenny Brockfaller, who've attended that workshop numerous times, and I doubt it changes all that much for them. Like,
They could give it.
why? I know. So, like, why the mandatory attendance for a workshop as opposed to perhaps if it's someone completing the form who's never attended a workshop, like if and or offering it to the organization electronically and putting them and making them responsible for reviewing it and asking questions. And then there could just be a spot on the application that says, I certify that I have watched the virtual, like the recorded workshop or something like that. Just thinking myself, as a mom and having to find childcare or something like that for attending a meeting where maybe I would be here for a couple of minutes. If we could do something to support our arts professionals, I think that would be one thing that could be really beneficial, is to make it something that they can do on their own time, whether it's we record the presentation and then send it to them, and or make it only required for those who have never attended a workshop.
I think there's some value in having everybody come. I know people like Jan and Heather are very busy, but Jen comes to a lot of the meetings. She's just like one of the first or second ones I haven't seen her at. And I think she gets value out of it. What's really important is when you do have a question, there's always something. I don't think we've rubber stamped anybody ever.
But
If you ask a question and she gives you an answer, then somebody else hears something and maybe they follow up. And I think if we tried to do that electronically, it could go back and forth because you'd be listening to go, wait, and then you forget. And I know with the Octagon, there's always a couple of things that I'm not sure what Heather's talking about, yet, or whoever fills out the form. And yet when she gets here
Well,
and
this is
explains it,
the
it makes sense.
workshop. So this is they haven't applied yet.
Right.
This is just the how to fill out the application.
Well-
So I totally understand that part of it and being able to ask questions of their application. But this is the how-to workshop.
Certainly you could flip the classroom in this sense, right? By having them do this on their own. We could have a session where they're welcome to come and ask questions. It could be a lot shorter and they don't need to come. It could be nobody shows up. But I do know that if everybody is required to attend and someone asks a question, everybody benefits from the answer.
Mhm.
And that wouldn't happen if it was sort of done separately online, unless somebody asks a question and the answer goes to everyone who's going to be applying or was expressed interest. But yeah, making the schedule a little more flexible has super benefits, as we've learned
Yeah.
over the last year and a half.
We could make it heavily recommended. And then I would say even not do it at the same time, do like the workshop, and then a couple days later have it available online, which would maybe encourage them to come live if at all possible. But I know you had a good point, Nancy, of, maybe you just, that night you just can't, there's nobody to watch your kid or something else is taking preference.
Or this is the 18th year I'm sitting through this thing.
Exactly.
In which case,
I'm sure Heather would love
nominating
to.
someone else from the organization to come who hadn't been there. It doesn't have to be the person filling
Yeah,
out the form.
and that could be beneficial.
Could be
for them.
recommended, yeah. But yeah, easing up on the scheduling would be wise. And the presentation, really, it's fairly, please forgive me, dry and straightforward, but by necessity.
Mhm.
And not it. How many questions do we typically get from people during these workshops?
Not many. I think that more often it's an opportunity to get feedback about the process, but
Mhm.
at that point, you've already made these decisions, and
Right.
so it's food for thought for the next year.
I mean, it's valuable to sort of set it up as a hoop that they have to go through to demonstrate their commitment, but
I don't know
That
that
may
that
not be a
really
huge
shows a
value.
commitment to
exactly.
what they're doing. No.
Right.
Yeah. I could sit in the back of the room and stare blankly at you for 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's more important that they're here for the hearings.
Pretty good at
Sure.
that.
But I kind of like the idea of highly recommended.
Yeah.
A representative from your organization attend the workshop. But
I mean,
Are there any legal ramifications for making it not required?
I don't like to waste anybody's time, and almost the majority of people, other than a few, are non-paid volunteers that
Mhm.
come to represent. So,
Mhm.
and they've got a life outside of us, but we are giving them taxpayer money.
Mhm.
And I think that we have the right and the expectation that we set certain criteria and that people are serious about, coming to us and asking for the city to help fund whatever projects they're doing. So, I mean, whether they have to watch it online and there's a way that they can signify that they watched the whole thing, they didn't just jump ahead on the YouTube or, I mean, there's an awful lot of ways to not watch that, but still get credit for watching it.
Mhm.
And I think we need to have some criteria that they are indeed
In-game.
applying themselves for the workshop, and whether it's right here in front of us or not. I think there's a lot of the new people, the newer organizations that benefit. Indian Cultural Center seems to have somebody different every year, and they always have a lot of questions. And I mean, so whether it's necessary for, ACAC to be here, I don't know. But I think there ought to be some kind of hoop that people jump through, or some standard that they meet one way or another, whether it's electronically or some other, just because they are asking the city to
Right.
provide them funds and their discretionary money. It's not, I mean, we want to make sure that we're always doing the right thing so we continue to expand our funding and our pool of money from the city. So I think we
It
have an
could be as
obligation.
simple as if they watch it, something on the form that says, just sign their name. I certified that whether it be them or someone else watched this. And then if it comes to light that they didn't, if we start to realize this, then, I mean, that could impact their ability to get funding later. So it's not, it's not taking away the you must come here, which, a lot of people don't want to be forced into it, but they know. So that's why I highly recommended. That might lead them to think that, okay, I should go to this because maybe if I go, maybe I'll get more
brownie
money than
points.
not.
Right. If we know what
Human
they're-
thinking of, I want as much money as I can, so maybe I should go to this so I can.
So has that always been a requirement, the workshop attendance? I mean, I know always, you haven't been here that long. But maybe it was,
It's been a requirement for at least 8 years, 9 years.
and maybe it was to cut down calls to the office with questions.
I think one of the main reasons may have been that we set out the schedule for hearing time signups, and it's an opportunity for people to sign up and get that done in one day rather than fielding calls and having to slot people in and work with schedules, because that's kind of a process, the hearing scheduling.
Yeah.
And it's much easier if people just pick a time and sign up and they're incentivized to go. But that's my guess.
Okay, but here.
I'm not.
We could just use a Google form that they could sign up on, that would then,
Yeah,
as soon as someone signed up for it, it would no longer be available, and then it could all be done electronically and wouldn't have to include.
I don't think it should be a reason to.
Yeah.
I don't think that should be a reason to maintain mandatory attendance, if it ever was.
Well, it is a signal of their intent to fill out an application. It's useful to have that information in advance just to sort of know what we're looking for.
So we could change it to highly recommend and then put the presentation online. So if somebody isn't here, they have to go online, view it, and certify that they viewed it to be eligible. I mean,
Or how about highly recommended, but if you can't attend, it's online.
Yeah, it's recorded and put on.
Yeah.
We put it on. It's on YouTube. It's on
Yeah.
the city's cable TV
Right.
page. So it's always online.
So it can still be required. It's just attendance at the session where it's done live.
so if they don't come here, they could watch it online or whatever and still get credit for having attended.
It's up to you all. I don't have a preference here.
That's
My
just,
preference is like, I think I'm in the minority opinion, but is to make it highly encouraged, but not required. Because I think the quality of application will reflect their intentions and reflect their commitment in asking for the funds. And I don't think adding additional hoops just to say somehow that that's going to determine their commitment to responsible use of the funds is actually going to do that. I think it's just an extra step people have to take. But that their commitment to it is going to show in their application, and then in how they respond to the questions when asked about their application, and then again in their final report.
For those of you who've been here longer than us, do you think it's obvious if you're talking to somebody or reading an application, if you get an idea on this person didn't go to the workshop, this person did or watched it based on their answers?
well,
I mean, it's
typically-
not going to be for everyone, but
Because now they've always had.
They've
to go
always
to the
gone.
Yeah,
workshop,
so they've
we
all
don't-
gone. The only time you have it is
Yeah.
when they send a representative
uh,
who hasn't been involved to this point. They're new with the organization or just came in to answer financial questions. So then they have some challenges answering other questions because they don't have that background.
Right.
But
so the issue is, do we need to make Heather Johnson come in again?
she,
And I just was
After
using
she-
that as an example.
It's
of
a-
someone-
no,
but it's
Like,
it's
yeah.
true.
Heather
She
and then
needs to
Jen
come
both
in
know the
every
process.
Yeah.
And there's a number. I mean, Stan would just sit
Stan,
not come in unless he
exactly.
got to talk.
Yeah.
So the whole point is, I think, make it, I highly recommend attendance
Yeah.
is good. But I personally think that they should also, if they don't come in, they should still view it. And we should know that they viewed the presentation. But they can do that at their leisure. I don't care. They can do it at home in their jammies at 10 o'clock at night or while they're drinking coffee and waking up in the morning.
Well, there are some changes that will need to be pointed out as
Mhm.
far as,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, the application will be different.
yeah,
So
so for
it'd be nice
that,
to explain that to folks because the ones who wouldn't come, or they might, I mean, Jen would come anyway, but just the ones that wouldn't come because they've done the application 10 times in a row would then go, oh, well, wait, what is this? And I don't want them filling it in incorrectly or
Right.
I just
calling
can't-
with questions
I
because it
can't do
wasn't.
save
done.
as.
That's
That's true.
whatever the consensus is, the majority I will go along with. I just would like to think that everybody took a little time, whether it's here in person or electronically, to
Yeah.
get acquainted with any changes, which we do have, or,
Thanks to
I
Nancy.
mean, it's going to
I-
be
I
online
think-
anyway, or on
Yeah.
YouTube, or I mean, it's not, we're not doing anything extra. We just encourage them to do that if they don't come live in person.
Yeah, I think that accomplishes what Nancy brought up, which is the scheduling and just the logistics of getting in here for it. And it also ensures that we have some acknowledgement that they know things have changed, right? So instead of making them come in, allowing them on their leisure within a reasonable timeframe to see the presentation. I think that
Worse than having them
makes everybody
try
happy.
to explain something and say, well, I didn't understand this. Well, if you'd come or watched, you would.
Right. Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
So,
So you'd like to change that to highly recommended? then?
Yeah, I think so.
Attendance at the workshop is highly recommended.
Yeah, at the workshop.
I think since all the rest of these things are mandatory pieces, I think we'll move that part up
Yeah.
Okay.
above that that intro paragraph to apply for. So.
Does the city have the infrastructure to have an online checkbox of some kind?
I think what we could just do is when they sign up for their time slot, we'll just have a little checkbox that says I watched or I attended the presentation in person or I watched it online. And if somebody doesn't check it, then that's a question for
Then
them.
we,
Yeah.
So do they do the scheduling of the workshop online? Because here it says to call, a city number.
So we can set it up either way. I mean, historically we've had the form here and then people call. They
Okay,
call and we
Okay.
deal with it that way.
it'd be nice.
But we can set it up online. It doesn't, either
That'd be
way.
better, because then you could do the checkoff thing.
And if somebody
We can make that.
hadn't come and hadn't viewed the video, it'd be a little reminder, oh, I probably should look
Yeah.
at that before I do it.
I feel like a Google form would just be a lot less work for the office too.
it's, let the city figure out
Yeah.
how to do it. The simplest solution isn't always the best when it comes to government,
Yeah, be careful, you'll get another volunteer job.
Oh, I mean, I could make a Google form in 5 minutes.
Yeah,
That would do
yeah,
that.
it's
So
pretty
I would
straightforward.
not be opposed to doing that.
Okay. Anything else?
Anything else, Nancy?
No, I think that
Okay,
was
no,
all
you've
on
been-
that one.
No, she's been great.
Yes, no, it's-
Heather will thank you.
All right. With changes approved. Do we have a motion to approve the new and improved?
Is this for the
Annual
For
grant?
the annual grant.
So we're still on the annual grant.
Yes.
Oh,
I will move to approve the annual grant.
I will second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We're now moving to the spring special grants, and I bet we have some things here.
Perhaps.
Wouldn't they just slide over?
Well, so same thing, just would be the workshop. Again, if we can change that wording to highly recommended. That was one thing on there. My biggest thing with the special project grant, like the guidelines form, was that under purpose, we never actually say what the purpose is. We say what it isn't, but we don't actually say what it is. It's all cannot, no, not this, not that. The first sentence says the Commission on the Arts offers a special project grant program for special projects. And that's the only thing that says what the purpose of the grant is. So to me, I just read that and I was like, that's not actually a purpose. So what is our purpose? Even if it's just rewording that first sentence, but then all the sentences that follow are all what it isn't, which just read really odd to me. Like,
Does that mean it is everything that is not?
not that, yeah, I didn't. So that was just a clarification thing that I had. And then I did have one other question on the requirements. So maybe it's on the application and then the final report, we are always very specific to ask about costs for attendance, but then also if organizations provided discounted or free admission, which seems to me is something that we're prioritizing as a positive for the city of Ames. But then on the guidelines and under the requirements, it specifically says we will give priority to applications that actually charge admission. So then why are we prioritizing funding for them, but then also saying like, if you do free and reduced admission, that's a good thing. So that to me seemed like a
Contradiction.
contradiction.
So maybe it needs to be rephrased because we do free and reduced rates to be sure that we're inclusive and we're reaching
Absolutely.
community.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the right thing. But obviously, we do want people to charge admission for most events because that's a way for them to self-generate funds, not depend on donors or CODA, for instance, to fund it for them. So if you've got a better way to tailor that or frame it, that would be great. But I think we do need to ask if they're providing any free tickets, because they don't always do all tickets free. It's usually, well, we're going to give tickets to kids who get free and reduced lunch or whatever group that they're,
Okay.
I mean, you
or
could
people
take out-
from Northcrest or,
Yeah, you could take out the checkbox, the yes, no box, and just kind of merge it. Will you offer, or do you plan on offering free or reduced tickets? If so, who is your target to receive those? Not maybe the best wording, but
Yeah, that,
ask them, are they going to do it? And then what's your requirement for who's getting them?
okay.
Which, like you said, is it, the reduced lunch kids? Or
Because it says,
right, so it's basically
ask if-
cross out if your
On the
event
application.
has an admission fee. Yeah, in the application.
yeah, we're asking if they're going to charge. So
Will your organization provide discounted or free admission to events? Yeah. And if yes, who is your target audience for free reduced admission? And if it's already going to be free, they'll say everybody.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And if not, hopefully they'll
Yeah.
say who. I don't think we need to sort of,
pretty much
Put a lot
just
of
eliminate
clauses
the
in there.
yes and no boxes then, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that accomplish what you were looking for, Dave?
I think so. Yeah. Eliminate, if you have the yes, no there, it's kind of, feels like they kind of have to in a way.
Yeah.
Right, but this gives them a chance to say
Just
more.
explain.
Right.
I'm going to say, if your event is ticketed, do you plan to offer free or reduced admission? Then? Is that what
Tickets
you're-
might be free to just limit capacity.
I think you could just eliminate the yes and no box. I don't think the verbiage is bad other than that.
It's ticketed, it could still be free ticketed, technically.
Back on the purpose statement, do we have revised language? Do you want to say something like, the Commission on the Arts offers the special project grant program, and then combine it with the next sentence, for opportunities and circumstances that cannot be anticipated within CODA's annual grant process? That's really what it ends up being, is
Mhm.
things that just come up that
Yeah.
would
Okay.
otherwise be valid.
Kind of merge those two into one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little more efficient.
That works.
Mhm.
Yeah. It was just the special projects for special projects.
Yeah,
That
that's
like,
not-
Yeah, yeah.
like, I don't know what that means.
But it's
And then-
special, darn it.
Yeah. Very special.
Well, and yeah, that third sentence then sums it up with the whole denied. You can't come back and try it again.
Yeah, I mean, that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that tends to be what the issues are. Otherwise, it's anything under the sun, really, basically.
Yeah.
Are we still limiting it to $1,000?
Might have raised it. Well, depending how much is available.
Right,
Um,
but it says funding up to $1,000 is
Yeah.
available for each award.
Yeah, that's what the limit is right now. That's what the fall amount was. We only had one application for the fall,
Right.
and you have an extraordinary amount of money available for the spring. So this might be an opportunity to either drum up a lot of applications or to increase the amount for a one-time situation.
Right. Unless we want to have a special.
Yeah, that's the other alternative, is to have some sort of additional granting round if you still have money left over after awarding spring special project grants. But I think you have like $15,000,
Right.
which is 3 times as much as you normally would have.
If we eliminate the $1,000 limit,
I would bump it up to 2 or 3 or something. to encourage some
See what happens.
more creative things.
So I'm wondering if we say $1,000, is that why we only have one?
Mhm.
Because maybe others are like, oh, that's not going to give me what I need, kind of a mentality.
Or it's not worth the paperwork to
Yeah.
ask for
Or that too.
$1,000.
Yeah.
And
in
going
the
to the
past,
mandatory
we
Yeah.
basically
exactly.
have probably more requests than we have funds. I don't know if it's just because of
Yeah.
the pandemic and coming out of that this
So
year.
this,
that
this
we-
one application is sort of an oddity.
That it was, yeah.
Okay.
The limit was raised about 2 or 3 years ago from 750 to 1,000.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, normally there's 4 or 5 applications per.
Yeah, we
season
usually don't
and
have a
have
problem
about-
giving the money away.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I think if we bumped it up, people might be looking at more adventurous
Mhm.
projects because they're trying to make up one, revenue that they've lost, and two, do more things that they weren't able to do in the past.
Right. Right.
But I don't know if we do put a cap on it or, well, we need to, but
If we put a cap on it, we'll get things at whatever the cap is.
Yeah.
It's just human nature.
So just leave it open and let people tell us. And
And
then,
we can always come back and say, yeah, okay, you wanted 15 grand, but we won't give you
Some
that.
guidance.
Yeah,
would be useful.
Yeah.
you
We can do that
select
like
how
the-
much you award to each one.
yeah, we
Yeah.
could do it like the annual grants. We get some huge numbers there. That we-
I just think you'll need to think about whether you want to go back to the original system next year. This
Once
this
this
might be a
bump-
one-time deal because you've got so much money. I don't think you'll have that situation again.
No, but we can make
Fall.
that
We do want
clear.
to spend that money.
Right.
We could make it clear when we send out the app, so, or the announcement.
So you'd like to take the cap off then for this, or
How about we just say for FY 22, 23, you know, the amount has been increased to $3,000. Because it probably is a one-time situation.
And if we get 5 each for $3,000 and they all look good,
Yeah.
we can do something. We
Yeah.
can do that.
I guess if we don't get a lot, do we have the power to say, well, we've got a little extra. We know that you were wanting a little more. We like this. Here's an extra $500 because we got it.
Well, hopefully, if we say it's limited to 3,000, they won't ask for more.
Right.
3,000 sounds like as reasonable a number as any.
Yeah.
We're all about reasonable.
so you want to say for spring 2022
Mm-hmm.
up to $3,000?
Mhm.
Okay.
Let's remember to edit that out next time.
Yeah. Nancy will catch it.
Or not, if we get more money.
Yeah. I guess
Yeah,
it
you never
kinda depends
know.
on what we get next time.
Mm-hmm.
I think I got my fiscal years mixed up. But
Yeah, spring is, when does spring end? When's the end of the period for this?
which,
So this is January through July.
So it is
January
all-
through the end of
June
June. I'm
30th.
sorry.
So it is all within the
this fiscal-
2022
Mhm.
fiscal year.
Oh, okay, 2022.
Right.
Because we're in 2021 now.
So is
2022
everyone
fiscal.
comfortable with the spring grant application with adjustments?
Yes.
changes?
I had a couple other quick things.
Oh,
Like
okay.
on
For
page 3,
consistency.
on
No,
the
go.
top of page 3, I think it's written this way other places, but changing it to that are accessible to people with disabilities, not to, not having it written as to the disabled. I think it's just
Oh,
better language to say people with disabilities. And then for consistency, the promotions part I would like to see that change to how we changed it in the
Yes.
annual grant application. How do you, just the more open-ended as opposed to the checklist.
Good.
But then other than that, I think that was it.
No, I like your wording on the disabled comment.
Mhm.
I think it's written that way other places. That was the only place that I noticed it written.
Just maybe not caught when they were updating things.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that was it.
Anything else, anyone?
And it doesn't say anything about that they have to attend the workshop for the special grants.
It does
It did, but
in the, on page 3 of the instructions,
Yeah.
but I modified that.
Okay.
To the strongly
Yeah.
encourage language.
So again, parallel to the annual grant thing.
Consistency. Yes. Oh. Shall we vote? Do I have a motion?
I so moved.
Okay, second.
Second.
All right. All those in favor of the new improved spring grant application as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion passes. Phew.
Terrific. These are all very good changes.
Yeah.
The annual grant and spring for special garage applications will be available as of August 11th if Brian gets all the changes.
Carly.
Carla, okay, Carly. A special note for September, due to Labor Day, we never meet on the first Monday of the month, so it'll be the second Monday of September, which is the 13th.
Okay.
At 5 o'clock, hopefully here again,
Yeah.
Hopefully.
not back to Zoom or something weird.
Do you know of any rumors that they're changing with everything? Okay. Good.
As long as they keep the health guy over at Story County happy.
Yeah.
The governor won't change it, so. Any other comments? Anything for the common good?
No, pretty productive.
Thank you, everyone. I thought this was very productive and we had some good input. Appreciate it. And I adjourn the meeting.